Hey, I'm Jusko from ProudMoney.com. Is Capital One getting ready to acquire Discover? According to an article today from Bloomberg, that might be the case. Now, the article doesn't have a whole lot of facts. It says that Capital One is considering a potential acquisition and studying a deal to acquire Discover, but not a whole lot more. Now, obviously, something is brewing because a media outlet of the size of Bloomberg wouldn't just throw this out there as a rumor. But what we don't know is there a deal on the table, and Capital One is just considering whether they want to go through with it, or is Capital One maybe in a position where they're looking at Discover's business and saying Discover is a little vulnerable right now. Maybe if we jump in and give them a decent offer, we can buy out Discover at a price maybe a little bit less than what we would have to pay for them at a different time. It's not clear. Now, if Capital One and Discover did come together as a single entity, that obviously would cement Capital One's place as sort of the new to credit and near prime #1 lender out there on the credit card market by far, because Capital One already sort of playing in this area, Discover already sort of playing in this area. So for many people, they're getting their first credit card from Discover when they're young, or maybe if they've had some past credit problems, they might be going to one or the other of these companies. So obviously, if the two of them combined, then Capital One kind of has a stranglehold on this, because none of the other major players really play too much in this market. Now, if you take Capital One and you add Discover to it, how does this combined entity compare to the other big banks in terms of size? Now, you can look at this a lot of different ways. I'm going to choose in this video to look at it in terms of the market capitalization, what is essentially the valuation of these companies on the stock market. Currently, Capital One sitting at roughly $52 billion on the stock market in terms of market capitalization. Discover at $27 billion, so a little bit over half. Put those together, you've got $79 billion, which would leapfrog the combined Capital One Discover company over US Bank and over PNC, but still short of Citibank, which sits at $104 billion, American Express at $153 billion, Wells Fargo at $186, Bank of America at $269 billion, and then JP Morgan, also known as Chase in the credit card industry, at $515 billion. So still significantly smaller than most of the other major banks in the credit card industry, but when you consider the fact that the Capital One and Discover combined company would still be mostly a credit card company versus the more vast banking operations of most of these other companies, other than American Express, I guess I would say, that is still a big increase for Capital One. Now, like I said, we don't know if Discover is receptive to being acquired by Capital One, but they have had some stumbles recently that make them probably more vulnerable to being acquired than maybe they were in the past. Last July, they came out, Discover that is, and said that essentially they had been overcharging some of their merchants for a rather long time, and that they were going to have to refund probably over $300 million to a number of their merchants. And then the FDIC told Discover, we've been kind of looking at how you're running your operations, and essentially we think you've been a little bit loosey-goosey in terms of your compliance and, keeping up the requirements that you should. And for a bank of your size, you kind of need to get your together. What the f? Now, I want to make it clear that the FDIC did not use the words loosey-goosey or get your shit together or especially what the fuck. And Discover did not agree that they necessarily had done anything wrong for the FDIC to be talking to them about. But at the same time, Discover did agree that they would put some more safeguards in place to satisfy the FDIC. And it just so happens that right around that same time, the CEO of Discover resigned from the company and the board of directors. So maybe Capital One sees all these problems and thinks we can get Discover at a lower price than we probably could have a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And maybe Discover, for their part, says, if we got to do all this compliance stuff, maybe we just sell the company and make it somebody else's problem. Now, if this acquisition comes to fruition, Capital One becomes pretty much the dominant player in that new to credit and sort of near prime space. Well, then for a lot of people that are sort of getting their cards in this space, that means they're sort of a single option, at least among the bigger banks. Yes, there are other places to go out there, but that would then mean that this is the place that most people are going to go, because so many people now get their first card from Discover, or maybe they go to Capital One if they are trying to get back on their feet again after some past credit problems, or vice versa. So if Capital One's the only one, you have to wonder, does approval get more difficult? Do interest rates go up? Are there more annual fees on some of these types of cards if they feel like there aren't that many other games in town for their potential customers? If you're a Discover card holder right now, you might not like the idea of Capital One being your new credit card issuer if you've dealt with Capital One in the past and you have some issues with them, or maybe you'd be happy about it. Maybe you like Capital One better than Discover and you'd like to see the two come together. Anyway, something brewing, but we don't know for sure what's going to happen yet at this point. Would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments section below. Otherwise, I thank you for watching. And as always, please go to ProudMoney.com, where we do credit card reviews, we talk personal finance, we talk deals, and all sorts of other fun stuff too. If you don't have a comment or you're not going to go to the website, you might want to watch that video right there next.